At my birthday dinner, my mom gushed, "Your sister just bought a penthouse. When will you stop wasting your life?" I laughed and said, "When she stops renting it from me." The table fell silent as her face dropped. My name is Jessica, and I'm the disappointment of the family. At least, that's what my mother, Linda, has been telling me for the past decade. My younger sister Sarah, 25, has always been the golden child. She's beautiful, charming, and according to my mother, successful in ways I could never understand. Growing up, Sarah got the bigger bedroom, the nicer clothes, and definitely more attention. When we were kids, I didn't mind much because I was a quiet, bookish type who preferred reading to socializing anyway. But as we got older, the favoritism became more pronounced and more painful. Sarah went to a prestigious university on our parents' dime while I worked 3 jobs to put myself through community college and then a state school. When Sarah graduated with a marketing degree, my parents threw her a huge party and bought her a brand new BMW. When I graduated summa cum laude with my finance degree, I got a card and a $50 gift certificate to Target. The thing is, I never let it show how much it hurt. I just kept my head down, worked hard, and built my life quietly. Very quietly, as it turned out. After college, I landed an entry-level position at a small investment firm. The pay was terrible, but I was hungry to learn. I lived in a studio apartment that was basically a closet, ate ramen for dinner most nights, and saved every penny I could. While Sarah moved back home and spent her days posting Instagram photos of her coffee and complaining about how hard it was to find the right job, I was working 12-hour days and studying for my Series 7 and Series 66 licenses. My parents, especially my mother, never missed an opportunity to compare us. "Sarah has such a good eye for style," she'd say, looking at my bargain store clothes with obvious distaste. "Sarah is so social, she has so many friends," she'd comment when I spend another weekend studying instead of going out. "Sarah just has that special something that attracts success," she'd conclude, as if success was something that just magically happened to certain people. The worst part was that Sarah played into it. She'd make little comments about my boring job and my sad little apartment. She'd joke about how I was becoming an old maid while she dated a string of increasingly wealthy men. She never worked a day in her life after college, moving from boyfriend to boyfriend, each one more willing to bankroll her lifestyle than the last. Meanwhile, I was quietly building something. After 2 years at the investment firm, I moved to a larger company with better pay. Then to an even larger one. I specialized in real estate investment trusts and property acquisition, and I was good at it. Really good. By the time I was 24, I was making 6 figures. By 25, I was making multiple 6 figures. I had worked my way up from analyst to associate to vice president in just 4 years, an unusually fast track that reflected both my dedication and my results. But I still lived modestly, drove a used Honda Civic, and wore clothes from discount stores. My mother saw this as further evidence of my failure to thrive, not understanding that I was stockpiling money for investments. The thing about real estate is that timing is everything. In late 2020, I saw an opportunity. The pandemic had created some unusual situations in the luxury rental market, and I had been watching a particular property for months. It was a stunning penthouse apartment in the most prestigious building in our city, with floor-to-ceiling windows, a wraparound terrace, and amenities that most people could only dream of. The owner was a tech executive who had moved to California during the pandemic and was desperate to get out from under the mortgage. The property was worth $2.8 million easily, but he was willing to sell for $2.2 million for a quick, cash close. I had been saving and investing for years, and I had exactly enough for a down payment plus renovations. I bought it in January 2021. But here's the thing, I didn't buy it to live in. I bought it as an investment property. The rental market for luxury properties in our city was insane, and I knew I could rent it for enough to cover the mortgage and then some. I spent 4 months completely renovating it, new flooring, updated kitchen appliances, a completely redesigned master bathroom, and carefully selected furniture throughout. So I hired a property management company to handle everything, had it beautifully staged, and put it on the market in May 2021. Within a week, I had multiple applications. One of them was from a young woman who claimed to work in marketing and social media consulting. She provided bank statements showing consistent deposits of $8,000 per month, had excellent references from previous landlords, and first and last month's rent plus security deposit ready to go. Her name was Sarah Mitchell. Yes, that's Sarah Mitchell. My sister Sarah had applied to rent my penthouse. The property management company sent me her application with a note that she seemed very eager and was willing to pay above asking price for the right place. She had no idea the property belonged to me, of course. The management company handled everything, and my name wasn't on any of the paperwork she would have seen. I almost laughed out loud when I saw her application. Sarah was planning to rent a $6,200 per month penthouse. Where was she getting that kind of money? I did a little digging and found out she was dating Marcus Weber, a successful divorce attorney who was apparently very generous with his girlfriend. The bank statements showed regular transfers from his account to hers, clearly designed to make her look financially independent on paper. I could have rejected her application. I could have told the property management company to choose someone else. But something about the irony of the situation was too delicious to pass up. My sister, who had spent years looking down on me for my modest lifestyle, was about to unknowingly become my tenant. I approved her application. The first month after Sarah moved in was almost surreal. I would get quarterly reports from the property management company about routine maintenance and tenant satisfaction, standard stuff for investment properties. Meanwhile, Sarah was calling our mother every other day to gush about her incredible new place. "Mom, you have to come see it," I heard her say during one of our family calls. "The kitchen has marble countertops and a wine fridge. The master bathroom has a soaking tub that overlooks the city. And the terrace, God, the terrace is like something out of a magazine." My mother would relay these conversations to me with barely contained excitement. "Your sister has really landed on her feet, Jessica. This Marcus must be quite something to be able to afford a place like that for her." I started following Sarah's Instagram more closely, watching her document every corner of my property. She posted photos of herself cooking in the kitchen I had renovated, lounging on the furniture I had carefully selected, hosting dinner parties on the terrace where I had personally chosen every piece of outdoor furniture. The captions were what really got to me: "So grateful for this beautiful space. Home is where the heart is. Living my best life in my dream home." The most painful part wasn't even the deception itself, it was watching my family's reaction to it. Suddenly, Sarah could do no wrong. When she posted a photo of herself reading on the terrace, my mother commented about how intellectual and sophisticated she looked. When she shared pictures from a dinner party, my father talked about how social and successful she was becoming. I, meanwhile, was still the disappointment. Still the boring one with a tiny apartment and the unglamorous job. The irony was almost too much to bear. About 6 months after Sarah moved in, my mother suggested we all meet for lunch at a cafe near the Harrison Tower. "We could walk by Sarah's building afterward," she said. "I'm dying to see it from the outside." I agreed, curious despite myself to see my own property through their eyes. When we arrived at the towering glass structure, my mother was practically vibrating with excitement. "Which floor is she on again?" my father asked, craning his neck to look up. "The penthouse," my mother said proudly. "The very top floor." I looked up at the windows I knew so well, having spent weeks selecting the perfect window treatments with my interior designer. From the street, you could just barely make out the edge of the terrace where Sarah hosted her Instagram-worthy gatherings. "It must be expensive," my father said, and I could hear the slight worry in his voice. He'd always been more practical about money than my mother. "Marcus is doing very well for himself," my mother replied dismissively. "Sarah deserves someone who can provide for her properly." The implication hung in the air. Sarah deserved someone who could provide for her, unlike me, who couldn't even provide properly for myself. As we walked around the building, my mother pointed out details she'd heard Sarah mention: the doorman, the concierge service, the private gym, the rooftop garden. All amenities I had carefully researched and factored into my investment decision. "Sarah says the building has a wine cellar where residents can store their collections," my mother told us. "Can you imagine? Your sister might start collecting wine." I almost laughed. Sarah's idea of wine sophistication was choosing between red and white at the grocery store. But I just nodded and made appropriate sounds of admiration. The lunch became a monthly tradition. Every 4 weeks, we'd meet near Sarah's building, walk by it, and listen to my mother share updates about Sarah's glamorous life in the penthouse. I learned about dinner parties I was helping to subsidize, about weekend guests who were sleeping on sheets I had selected, about romantic evenings on a terrace I had designed. The property management company sent me monthly reports with photos of the apartment's condition, and I could see evidence of Sarah's life scattered throughout my carefully curated space. Her clothes draped over the chair I had picked out, her books stacked on the coffee table I had agonized over, her plants thriving in the light from the windows I had insisted on keeping unobstructed. It was like watching someone else live a life I had created for them, which, I suppose, is exactly what was happening. The breaking point came during my 27th birthday dinner, exactly 1 year before the revelation that would change everything. We were at a nice restaurant, not as fancy as Chez Laurent but upscale enough to feel special. Sarah arrived late, as usual, full of apologies and stories about her busy, fabulous life. "I'm so sorry I'm late," she said, kissing everyone's cheeks and settling into her chair. "I was on a call with my yoga instructor about setting up classes on the terrace. Can you believe I can have private yoga sessions with a view of the entire city?" My mother beamed. "Sarah, you're living such an interesting life. Tell Jessica about the art gallery opening you went to last week." For the next hour, I sat through detailed descriptions of events happening in my building, parties in my apartment, and experiences made possible by my investment. Sarah talked about the neighbors she'd been meeting, the building's social events, the improvements she was hoping to make to her space. "I'm thinking about redoing the guest bathroom," she said at one point. "Maybe something with more color, you know? Make it really pop." I nearly choked on my wine. The guest bathroom had been one of my biggest renovation investments, with custom tile work and imported fixtures. The idea of Sarah redoing it made my stomach clench. "That sounds expensive," my father said cautiously. "Marcus doesn't mind," Sarah replied with a wave of her hand. "He says I should make the space truly mine." After dinner, as we walked to our cars, my mother pulled me aside. "Jessica, honey, I need to talk to you about something." I braced myself. These conversations never went well. "I'm worried about you," she continued. "Watching your sister tonight, seeing how she's thriving, it just makes me realize how stuck you seem to be." "Stuck?" "You're almost 28, living in the same tiny apartment you moved into after college. You never go anywhere interesting, you never meet anyone new. Sarah is building a life, creating experiences, growing as a person. What are you doing?" I stared at her, feeling that familiar ache in my chest. "I'm working, Mom. I'm building my career." "But what kind of life is that? All work and no play?" "When I was your age, I was already married to your father, planning our future together. You're just existing." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her about my investment portfolio, my growing net worth, my carefully planned financial future. I wanted to explain that I was building something substantial while Sarah was building nothing but Instagram posts and debt. But I couldn't, because doing so would reveal the elaborate web I had woven around my own success. "I'm happy, Mom," I said instead. "Are you, though? Really?" That question haunted me for months. Was I happy? I was successful, financially secure, and professionally accomplished. But I was also lonely, frustrated, and tired of living a lie. I was proud of what I had built, but I couldn't share that pride with anyone. I was watching my sister get credit for living in the space I had created while I got pity for the modest life I had chosen. The cognitive dissonance was becoming unbearable. Things got worse when Sarah and Marcus broke up. I found out about it the same way I found out about everything else in Sarah's life, through my mother's weekly phone calls. "Sarah is going through a difficult time," my mother told me. "Marcus turned out to be not as committed as she thought. She's heartbroken, but she's being so strong about it." What my mother didn't know was that I was getting increasingly urgent calls from my property management company about late rent payments. Sarah had clearly been depending on Marcus for more than just companionship. "The tenant in 4501 is 2 months behind," my property manager, Janet, told me during one of our calls. "She keeps promising the payment is coming, but we haven't seen anything. She's been avoiding our calls lately." I felt genuinely conflicted. Part of me wanted to help Sarah out of a tight spot. She was my sister, after all, and everyone goes through rough patches. But part of me was furious that she was treating my property so carelessly while continuing to post about her amazing home online. The situation came to a head when Sarah started dating someone new, a guy named Derek who she claimed was even more successful than Marcus. Suddenly, her social media was full of posts about her incredible boyfriend and their perfect life together in her gorgeous penthouse. But the rent still wasn't getting paid. "She's now 3 months behind," Janet informed me. "We need to start eviction proceedings if she doesn't pay by the end of the week." I stalled, asking for more time, hoping Sarah would figure things out. But as the weeks passed and her Instagram posts became more and more elaborate, professional photo shoots in my living room, dinner parties for Derek's colleagues, weekend getaways that she apparently couldn't afford while still owing me thousands in rent, my patience wore thin. The final straw came when Sarah posted a photo of herself and Derek toasting with champagne on the terrace, with a caption that read, "So grateful to have found my person in this perfect place. Here's to our future together in our dream home." Our dream home. She was now claiming joint ownership of my property with a boyfriend she'd been dating for 3 months. That night, I called Janet back. "Let's send her a formal notice," I said. 30 days to pay in full or vacate. But before that notice could be served, my mother called with a birthday dinner invitation. For 3 years, Sarah lived in my penthouse. For 3 years, she posted Instagram photos of her gorgeous apartment, hosted parties on her terrace, and told everyone who would listen about her fabulous lifestyle. My mother was over the moon. "Sarah is doing so well," she gushed whenever we talked. "You should see her apartment, Jessica. It's in the Harrison Tower, you know, that gorgeous building downtown. The penthouse. Can you imagine? She's really made something of herself." I would just smile and nod. "That's great, Mom. I'm happy for her." Meanwhile, Sarah's rent checks came in like clockwork every month. Well, Marcus's rent checks, technically, since he was the one actually paying. But Sarah had no idea she was helping to build my real estate portfolio. The whole situation might have continued indefinitely if not for two things. First, Sarah and Marcus broke up about 6 months ago. Apparently, he found out she was also seeing someone else and cut her off financially. Second, and more importantly, Sarah's new boyfriend was not quite as wealthy as she had led everyone to believe. The rent situation became a monthly source of stress. Janet would call me with updates about Sarah's excuses. The check was in the mail, there had been a banking error, Derek was traveling and would transfer the money when he returned. For the first 2 years, the payments would eventually come, usually right on time since Marcus was handling everything. But after their breakup, it became chaos, payments coming weeks late, always with a different explanation. During this period, Sarah's online presence became even more elaborate. She started what she called lifestyle content, posting daily stories about her morning routine in the penthouse, her skincare regimen in the marble bathroom, her evening yoga sessions on the terrace. She gained thousands of followers who were fascinated by her luxurious lifestyle and constantly asked for home tours and decorating tips. I watched, with a mixture of fascination and horror, as Sarah became a minor social media influencer based entirely on living in my property. Brands started reaching out to her for partnerships. She began posting sponsored content featuring products arranged artfully around my furniture, in my kitchen, on my terrace. But here's the thing about influencer income, it's inconsistent and usually much less than people think. While Sarah might make $500 here and $1,000 there from sponsorships, it wasn't nearly enough to cover a $6,200 monthly rent plus her lifestyle expenses. "Your sister is becoming quite the entrepreneur," my mother told me proudly during one of our calls. "She's monetizing her social media presence. Companies are paying her to feature their products in her beautiful home." The irony was staggering. Sarah was literally making money off of my investment, while I continued to be seen as the family failure. But the real problem wasn't the late payments or even the social media empire she was building. The problem was that Sarah seemed to be losing track of reality. She started referring to the penthouse as her place not just online, but in conversations with family. She talked about her building and her neighbors and her views as if she had some permanent claim to them. The situation reached a new level of absurdity when Sarah started giving advice about real estate investment. "You know, Jessica," she said during a family barbecue, "you should really think about investing in property. Look at what I've been able to build with my place. Real estate is such a smart investment." I nearly spit out my drink. "Is that right?" "Absolutely. I mean, I basically got in on the ground floor when the market was perfect, and now my place has probably appreciated significantly. Derek and I have been talking about maybe expanding our portfolio." "Our portfolio?" "Expanding our portfolio." I had to excuse myself to the bathroom before I said something I'd regret. But even more frustrating than Sarah's delusions were my family's reactions to them. My father started asking Sarah for investment advice. My mother bragged to her friends about her daughter, the real estate mogul. Extended family members reached out to Sarah for tips on finding luxury rentals. Meanwhile, I was still seen as the cautious, boring daughter who was too scared to take risks with money. The breaking point should have been when the rent stopped coming altogether, but it wasn't. The breaking point was when Sarah started talking about buying the penthouse. It happened during one of our monthly family lunches. We were sitting in a cafe near the Harrison Tower, as had become tradition, when Sarah announced that she and Derek were considering making an offer on the penthouse. "We've been renting for so long," she explained, "and Derek thinks it makes more sense to build equity. Plus, we've put so much of ourselves into that space, you know? It really feels like home." My mother was beside herself with excitement. "Sarah, that's wonderful. You'd actually own that beautiful place?" "Well, we'd have to negotiate with the current owner," Sarah said. "But Derek knows people in real estate, and he thinks we could probably get a good deal. Especially since we've been such good tenants and we're already established there." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. They wanted to buy my property. Sarah wanted to buy my property from me, without knowing it was mine, probably for less than it was worth, while owing me thousands in back rent. "That's exciting," I managed to say. "Do you know who the owner is?" "Some investment company, I think," Sarah replied dismissively. "You know how these things work, probably some rich guy who bought it as a tax write-off and doesn't really care about it. Derek says investors like that are usually motivated sellers if you approach them right." My father looked concerned. "Are you sure you can afford to buy a place like that?" "Derek's got it handled," Sarah said with a wave. "Plus, my social media stuff is really taking off. I might even be able to get sponsorship deals to help with the down payment. Companies love partnering with someone who has such a beautiful space to showcase their products." After lunch, as we walked past the building, Sarah pointed up at the penthouse windows with a proprietary air. "Soon, that's really going to be mine," she said. "Well, ours. Derek and I are talking about getting married, and he says the penthouse would be the perfect place for a wedding reception. Can you imagine? Getting married in your own home, with that view? That night, I called Janet and told her to start eviction proceedings. Are you sure? She asked. I know it's been difficult with the late payments, but she's still family, right? That's exactly why I need to do this, I said. She's lost sight of reality, and I can't enable it anymore. The next few weeks were tense. Sarah started getting official notices about the unpaid rent, but she seemed to think they were just aggressive negotiating tactics. The management company is trying to pressure us, she told my mother during one of their calls, which my mother then relayed to me. They probably know we're interested in buying and they're trying to create urgency. Derek says it's a classic real estate move. Meanwhile, Sarah's social media presence grew even more elaborate. She started posting house hunting content, talking about the difficult decision of potentially buying her current place versus looking for something new. She asked her followers for advice about real estate investments and home ownership, positioning herself as someone navigating the luxury property market. The comments on her posts were filled with congratulations and advice from followers who had no idea she couldn't afford the rent on the place she was pretending to consider purchasing. You're so lucky to have options like this. One commenter wrote. Goals. I hope I can afford a place like that someday, wrote another. You've built such a beautiful life for yourself, commented a third. Each comment felt like a knife twist. Sarah was being praised for a life I had literally built for her, while I remained invisible. The final straw came when Derek started making appearances in Sarah's content. He would pose with her in my living room, cook with her in my kitchen, host his friends on my terrace. In one particularly galling post, he was shown planning renovations for the penthouse, measuring walls and discussing changes they wanted to make to their space. Derek has such great ideas for updating the place, Sarah captioned a video of him sketching redesigned plans for my guest bathroom. We're thinking of really making it our own once we buy it. That video has over 10,000 views. 10,000 people watching my sister's boyfriend plan renovations to my property while I remain completely anonymous in my own success story. Now, I want to be clear about something. I'm not a monster. If Sarah had come to me, if she had been honest about her situation, I would have helped her. We might not have been close, but she's still my sister. But instead of reaching out, she doubled down on the pretense. She started posting even more aggressively on social media about her amazing penthouse and her incredible lifestyle. She threw a housewarming party for her new boyfriend's friends, posting photos with captions like "so grateful for this beautiful space and living my best life in my dream home." My mother, naturally, used every opportunity to throw this in my face. Sarah's having another dinner party this weekend, she'd tell me during our weekly phone calls. In that gorgeous penthouse of hers. You really should try to be more social like your sister. Maybe if you put yourself out there more, you'd find someone willing to treat you the way Sarah's boyfriends treat her. It stung every single time. Here I was, successful in my own right, financially independent, and actually owning the property my mother was using to shame me, and I couldn't say a word because I had created this elaborate situation. But I was getting tired of it. And when my mother called to invite me to my own birthday dinner and spent 10 minutes talking about how Sarah had bought the penthouse and was really settling down into property ownership, I realized it was time for the truth to come out. Mom, I said carefully, Sarah bought the penthouse? Well, not bought exactly, my mother backtracked. But you know, she's been living there for so long, it's practically hers. And her new boyfriend is talking about maybe buying it for her as an engagement present. Can you imagine? Your sister might be engaged soon, Jessica. To a man who wants to buy her a penthouse. I felt something snap inside me. That's really something, I said. I can't wait to hear more about it at dinner. Which brings us to last Saturday night, my 28th birthday dinner at Chez Laurent, the fanciest restaurant in town. My parents had insisted on taking both Sarah and me out for a family celebration, though it was clear from the start that Sarah was the real star of the evening. She arrived 20 minutes late, dressed in an outfit that probably cost more than most people's car payments, and immediately launched into a detailed account of her incredible week at the penthouse. You guys, you have no idea how amazing it is to wake up in that space every morning, she gushed, not even acknowledging that it was supposed to be my birthday dinner. The sunrise through those floor-to-ceiling windows is just breathtaking. And the terrace. I had yoga class out there this morning. My mother was practically glowing with pride. Sarah has such good taste, she said to me, as if I needed the comparison made explicit. She's really created something special in that space. My father, who typically stayed out of these dynamics, even chimed in. It's a beautiful building, he agreed. Very impressive, Sarah. I sat there cutting my salmon and trying to figure out how to handle the situation. Part of me wanted to just let it slide, to continue keeping my secret and avoid the inevitable drama that would follow the truth. But as Sarah continued to hold court, describing in detail the renovations she was planning and the furniture she wanted to invest in, I realized I couldn't do it anymore. So Sarah, I said during a brief lull in her monologue, how long have you been living in the Harrison Tower penthouse? Almost 3 years now, she said proudly. It's been such a journey, you know? Really growing into the space, making it my own. And you love it there? God, yes. I mean, it's everything I ever dreamed of. The location, the amenities, the space itself. I honestly can't imagine living anywhere else. My mother jumped in. Sarah has such sophisticated taste, she said to me. I know you're happy with your little apartment, Jessica, but you should really see what Sarah has accomplished. It might inspire you to aim higher. That was it. That was the moment I decided I was done. Actually, Mom, I said, setting down my fork and looking directly at Sarah, I have seen the penthouse. It's beautiful. Sarah looked confused. Wait, when did you see it? Well, I see the photos from the property management company's monthly reports, I said casually. You know, the ones they send to landlords. The table went quiet. Sarah's face started to change, confusion shifting to something that looked like dawning horror. Jessica, my mother said slowly, what are you talking about? I turned to look at my mother, and then back at Sarah. I'm talking about the fact that Sarah doesn't own the penthouse, Mom. She rents it. From me. You know that moment in movies where someone drops a bombshell and everything goes into slow motion? That's exactly what happened. Sarah's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. My father's fork hung suspended over his plate. My mother's mouth fell open. That's not possible, Sarah said, but her voice was barely a whisper. I bought the Harrison Tower penthouse in January 2021, I continued, my voice steady. Paid $2.2 million cash. Well, mostly cash. I got a great deal because the previous owner needed to sell quickly. Jessica, my mother said, and I could hear the warning in her tone. This isn't funny. You're right, it's not funny. What's not funny is that Sarah hasn't paid rent in 3 months and I've been getting calls from my property management company about starting eviction proceedings. Sarah had gone completely pale. You can't be serious. I pulled out my phone and opened the property management app. Sarah Mitchell, Unit 4501 Harrison Tower. Lease started June 1, 2021. Current balance owed, $24,800 plus late fees. I showed her the screen. Would you like to see the original lease agreement with your signature on it? My mother was staring at me like I had grown a second head. Jessica, how is this possible? You work at some little investment company. You live in that tiny apartment. You drive a 15-year-old car. I work at Blackstone Capital Management, I corrected. I'm a senior vice president specializing in real estate acquisitions. I live in a modest apartment because I prefer to invest my money rather than spend it on impressing people. And I drive a reliable car because I don't need to prove my worth with material possessions. The silence stretched on. Other diners were starting to look over at our table, probably wondering why we all looked like we'd seen a ghost. But, my father said slowly, if you own Sarah's building. Then I've been listening to Mom lecture me about my failures while Sarah has been living in my property and posting about her success on social media. Yes. Sarah finally found her voice. Why didn't you tell me? When would I have told you, Sarah? When you were bragging about your penthouse at Christmas dinner? When you were posting Instagram stories about your dream home? When you were telling everyone how much more successful you were than your boring older sister? I never said that. You didn't have to say it directly. But you certainly implied it every chance you got. My mother was still processing. Jessica, are you telling me that you've been wealthy this entire time and you never said anything? I'm telling you that I've been successful this entire time and nobody bothered to ask. You were also busy assuming that Sarah was the successful one because she lived in a nice apartment and wore expensive clothes. It never occurred to any of you to wonder how I could afford to buy investment properties or why I might choose to live modestly. But you never corrected us, my father pointed out. Would it have mattered? When I graduated summa cum laude, you threw Sarah a bigger party for finishing her sophomore year. When I got promoted to vice president, Sarah got a new car for her birthday the same week. When I bought my first investment property, Sarah got a trip to Europe for finding herself. When would have been a good time to mention my success? The truth of what I was saying was written all over their faces. They knew I was right. Sarah, I said, turning back to my sister, I need you to understand something. I didn't plan this. When your application came through my property management company, I had no idea it was you until I saw your name. I could have rejected it, but I thought maybe it would be nice to have family in one of my properties. You should have told me, she said, and I could hear tears in her voice. Maybe. But you should have been honest about your situation instead of pretending you owned something you were renting. And you definitely should have kept paying your rent. My mother had been quiet for several minutes, which was unusual for her. Finally, she looked up at me. Jessica, I owe you an apology. Just one? She had the grace to look ashamed. You're right. We haven't been fair to you. I assumed. You assumed that success looks a certain way. That if someone isn't flashing their money around, they must not have any. That if someone chooses to live modestly, they must be unsuccessful. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Sarah was crying now, quiet tears streaming down her face. Jess, I'm so sorry. I didn't know about any of it. I thought I was doing better than you. You were, in some ways, I admitted. You were doing better at enjoying life, at making connections, at being happy with what you had. I was so focused on building something for the future that I forgot to live in the present. But that doesn't excuse the way you've treated me, or the way you've let Mom and Dad treat me. The waiter appeared at our table, clearly uncomfortable with the emotional scene we were creating. Is everything all right here? Can I get you anything? Actually, I said, I think we're done. Could we get the check, please? I'll get it, my father said quickly. No, I said. It's my birthday dinner. I'll pay. As I handed my American Express black card to the waiter, I saw my family exchange glances. The card was just another sign of the life I'd been living that they knew nothing about. Jessica, Sarah said as we waited for the receipt, what happens now? With the apartment, I mean. I looked at her for a long moment. She looked genuinely remorseful, and despite everything, she was still my sister. That depends, I said. Are you sorry because you got caught, or are you sorry because you realize how you've been treating me? Both, she said honestly. But mostly the second one. I've been awful to you, Jess. I know that now. I was so insecure about not having a real career or any real accomplishments that I grabbed onto anything that made me feel successful. But I was successful at your expense, literally and figuratively, and I hate that. I nodded. Okay. Here's what's going to happen. You have 30 days to either pay what you owe or move out. If you can't pay, I'll waive the back rent and give you a good reference for wherever you want to move next. But the lease ends either way. That's more than fair, she said. And Sarah? The Instagram posts about the penthouse stop now. Tonight. She nodded, pulling out her phone. I'll delete them all when I get home. Don't delete them all. Just don't post any more pretending you own the place. What you did there was real, even if the ownership was fake. You entertained friends, you created memories, you lived your life. Those experiences don't become invalid just because you were renting. She looked surprised by that. Really? Really. But no more lies. About anything. The ride home was quiet. My parents dropped me off at my apartment, and for the first time in years, my mother really looked at the building. It's nice, she said, sounding surprised. It's enough, I replied. It's always been enough. Would you like to come over for dinner next week? She asked. Just the family. We could cook together like we used to. I'd like that, I said. But Mom? No more comparisons. No more assumptions about what success looks like. And no more treating Sarah like she's worth more than me just because she spends money differently. Deal, she said. That was 6 months ago. A lot has changed since then. Sarah moved out of the penthouse and into a much more modest apartment that she can actually afford. She got a real job doing social media marketing for a local company, and she's actually good at it. We have dinner together once a week now, and she's slowly paying me back the money she owed, even though I told her it wasn't necessary. My parents and I have rebuilt our relationship on more honest ground. My mother still struggles sometimes with her assumptions about success and money, but she's trying. My father has started asking me for investment advice, which is his way of acknowledging that I might actually know what I'm doing. I sold the penthouse 3 months ago for $3.1 million, making a solid profit on my investment after holding costs and renovations. I'm using the money to buy a small apartment building in an up-and-coming neighborhood. I'm also looking at buying myself a real home for the first time, something bigger than my studio but still modest by most standards. And Sarah? She's dating someone new, a teacher named Mike who doesn't care that she doesn't live in a penthouse. She seems happier than I've seen her in years. As for me, I'm learning to find the balance between building for the future and enjoying the present. I bought myself a new car, still a Honda, but a newer model, and I've started taking vacations. Small ones, but still. The best part, though, is that I don't have to keep secrets anymore. When people ask what I do for work, I tell them. When my accomplishments are worth celebrating, I celebrate them. And when my family talks about success, they include me in the conversation. It turns out that the most satisfying revenge isn't making people pay for how they've treated you. It's making them see you clearly for the first time and realize what they've been missing all along. But I'll be honest, The look on everyone's faces when I dropped that bombshell at dinner will probably remain one of my favorite memories forever. Sometimes the truth really is the best revenge of all.